A massive nationwide recall for infant slings. Just weeks after a warning about the popular product, the government says certain slings are just too dangerous to be used. A 6-day-old infant, a 7-week-old baby, and a 3-month-old all suffocated. Their deaths all connected with a particular infant sling. Our consumer investigator Ruth Spencer has been following this recall since it was announced this morning. Ruth, a lot of parents use these slings.
Yeah, and that's why this story is so urgent, Devin. There have been 14 deaths connected with infant slings, but the 3 most recent deaths are all connected to 2 particular slings, and they're both made by the company Infantino. The U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission has announced a recall of both the Infantino Sling Rider and the Wendy Bellissimo sling. Toys R Us, rather Babies R Us, Target and Walmart sold the slings nationwide between January of 2003 and this month. The CPSC wants you to stop using these dangerous slings immediately. And again, the 3 most recent infant deaths were associated with those Infantino slings.
What do you see? What do you see?
Courtney Velasquez had one of those Infantino slings, a hand-me-down from a neighbor, but she says she just didn't feel right about using it.
I kept looking down and her face was against the fabric. It was squished against the fabric, and I just was afraid that she was going to suffocate in there.
So when she heard about Wednesday's recall, the Rochester mother of 3 knew listening to her instinct was the right thing to do. It may have saved her daughter's life.
I thought, thank God I got rid of that sling and didn't use it. I just knew, and then I thought, oh my gosh, I had that gut instinct that just wasn't, I just didn't feel right about it.
But not every parent has the same story about those slings. Ann Hennigan lost her 12-week-old daughter, Kathleen. She was carrying her in a sling while she was grocery shopping.
There was this mucus with blood in it. It's coming out of her nose, out of her right nostril.
Oh, and again, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission wants parents and other caregivers to immediately stop using those Infantino slings that are being recalled tonight. Now, of course, there are some other suffocation hazards that can take a child's life. Our Dr. Frank McGeorge joins us now to talk about those, and I know that as an emergency room physician, you have seen infant deaths that are preventable.
Well, you know, that's absolutely right, Ruth. In fact, I've even seen deaths related to a similar carrier called a Snuggie. Newborns especially, you have to remember, are very delicate, and it doesn't really take much more than their face accidentally pressing into something to actually cause death. Remember, little babies vary greatly by age in terms of their ability to pick up their head, turn, roll, or move well enough to get out of position that might be suffocating them. In terms of preventable causes of infant deaths, 2 of the biggest are, first, too much loose bedding, including comforters and pillows in their crib that could accidentally cover their face. And second, when a newborn sleeps in the same bed as an adult. Now, this is especially dangerous below 4 months when a larger parent can easily roll on top of a child and smother them. Now, other risk factors related to infant death are infants exposed to cigarette smoke as well as alcohol or drug use by the caregiver. Now, 2 things that are associated with a decreased risk of newborn death are putting your child to sleep on their back and using a pacifier. Now, pacifier use is actually kind of interesting because many experts are reluctant to recommend it because of its interference potentially with a child latching on for breastfeeding and a larger tendency for children who use pacifiers to get ear infections. But ultimately, this is something that I think is really important to pay attention to, particularly putting your child to bed on their back, getting rid of bedding, don't sleep with your child, and make sure that if they are interested in using a pacifier, you try and do it.
All right. Now, going back to the infant carriers, so would you say that basically all infant carriers are less than safe?
Well, you know, it's funny. As a parent that's used them, I find them very comfortable and very effective, and I enjoyed using them with my child. It goes back to a lot of basic things. As with all infant care, it's being careful to use things properly and making sure that their face isn't being pressed into the fabric too much, or actually that their chest isn't being compressed too tightly. As long as you're careful, these things should generally be safe, but I think this particular product where the child could fall into the sling may have been a little too much.
Yeah. Boy, you have to watch a baby every second, don't you?
Exactly.
All right. Thank you, Dr. McGeorge. And remember,